أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم، إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم، تنزيل العزيز الرحيم، لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب، فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وأحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم ولو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد وإن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنا يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننقصه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه شعرا وما ينبغي لها إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي الإدام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحت كل اسم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها، اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك، وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك، وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقضائه ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرعت بجهلي، وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته، وكم من فاده من البلاء أقلته، وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي، وقعدت بي أغلالي، وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أمالي، وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجحالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنذر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعته فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك، وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في عمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ذري وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعدما انتبه عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من عاويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه قرت لعظمتك ساجدة وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر هوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارها سعت إلى أوتان تعبدك تاعيا وإشارت باستغفارك مذعنة ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك أنت يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أدج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فحبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وحبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك. وبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يزج إليك زجيج معمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يهلكه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات، ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. وباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدعا وتتولت بالإنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حكمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته، كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزله أو إحسان تفضله أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره جميعا. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بذري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي جميعا، يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا، وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي جميعا. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قوي على خدمتك جواره، واشدد على العزيمة جوانه، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرده، ومن كادني فكده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر ذلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، وبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here are announcements for tonight's Shab-e Juma program. A ladies' online program for the Shahadat of Imam Muhammad al-Taqi alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. This Tuesday, July 21st at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Program will start with Quran recitation, Hadith Qissa Marsiya, lecture by Zakira Shairoz Jaffari, finishing with Ziyarat and Dua Faraj. The Zoom link details are on the slides. This is a ladies only program. Surah Fatiha is requested for the names listed on the slide. Also for marhum brother Ghulam Ali Adat, who passed away in Karachi yesterday. Also include all our marhumin of Kul Mu'minin and Mu'minat, Muslimin and Muslimat. Al-Fatiha. Let's end the announcement with Dua Shafai Maris or the names listed on the slide. Anyone who needs our dua anywhere in the world, especially people suffering from COVID-19, and a special request for Sayyida Saima Naqvi, who is undergoing emergency surgery in Toronto. Please recite Dua Shafai Maris for all of them together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mawtarra iza da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. يا الله.
We're just waiting for AV to get set up. Okay, well, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, live. Mu'mineen, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome this evening to the Q&A session that we have with our resident alim, Maulana Rizvi. To submit your questions online, please refer to the Menti code that should be at the bottom of your screens. I noticed during the recitation of Surah Yasin and Dua Kumail, some questions have already begun coming in. Inshallah, we will try to tackle as many questions as we can. We have a hard stop at about 9 p.m. So that we can then end up or wrap up with Ziyarat Warith, followed by Salat at a little after 9-10 p.m. So we have about an hour with Maulana Sahib. And before we start addressing the questions that have already begun coming in, I'd like to invite Maulana Sahib to say a few words, after which we will then, inshallah, begin to tackle the questions that have already begun coming in. Please welcome Maulana Sahib with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية إلى أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Sisters and brothers in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be on a live program again, especially keeping in mind that we have not been able to have a physical meeting with the community for almost 4 months now. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring the day closer that we can go back to the normal gatherings and congregation. For today's question and answer session, I just wanted to, share with you one hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, "Al-ilm khaza'in," that knowledge is actually treasures. وَمَفَاتِحُهُ as-su'al, and the keys to that treasure is asking question. فَاسْأَلُوا رَحِمَكُمُ اللَّهِ, therefore ask questions. May Allah have mercy on you. فَإِنَّهُ يُجَرْ أَرْبَعَ. The Prophet says when question answers happen, 4 people are actually rewarded for it. The first one, as-sa'il, the person who is asking the question. The second person to be rewarded is wal-mutakallim, the one who is responding, and the speaker basically. The third is wal-mustami', means the audience which is listening to the question and answer. The fourth one is the most important one, interesting one, where the Prophet says wal-muhibbu lahum, somebody who loves this three individuals. Why? Because not everybody have in them to stand up and ask questions, even if they would have some questions in their minds. And so they always would wait for somebody else to ask that question. Even during the days of the Prophet, the Muslims in Medina, they actually used to wait for the travelers out of town. Travelers would come in because they would say, he's going to ask question and we'll be able to hear the question and the answers. And so, we have to, inshallah, use this issue of asking question. This is an Islamic tradition. There's nothing new in our traditions about it anyway. Let me just end with one personal memory on this issue. You would ask the questions, and the questions are all open on the subject. But I hope you don't expect me that I'll be able to answer all the questions. The only person who made that claim was Amir al-Mu'mineen when he says, Saluni, Saluni, ask me whatever you want. But inshallah, we'll try with the best of our ability. Sometimes I would have a very simple answer, which is based on when I went to Qom for my studies. I was just 15 years old. My parents, my family was there. My father wanted to settle me down before, they continue with their journey. So when I was saying Khuda Hafiz to them at Tehran airport, this is in 1972, my father mentioned, three things to me as a parting advice. And one of the things he mentioned is that, remember, if you find yourself in a largest of audience and somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to that, don't be ashamed to say, I don't know. Rather than making up, coming up with a, answer just by that. No. You will get the opportunity to look into it, and then you will be able to respond later on. And that became part of my, subconscious value. And I remembered this incident many, many years after that, maybe 15 years or more, when I had come to a seminar here in Toronto from Vancouver in mid 80s. And in one of the question answer sessions in a seminar, an elderly gentleman stood up and he asked me a question. And I said, I haven't really studied this from that angle. So inshallah, I won't be able to answer now. So that person came to me later on during the lunch break, and he said something, for me it was interesting. He says, you are the first alim or sahibi amama whom I hear saying, I don't know, I will look at it. And that's when I remembered the advice that my father had given to me, that I had basically imbibed that in my psychic. And so that's, it is a learning process for those who ask questions, and even for me who are asking answering the questions. This is also a learning opportunity for me also. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand the haqq and be with haqq and practice that, inshallah. Aqid.
Thank you, Maulana Sahib. We have 50 minutes, and already in the first few minutes, Maulana, we have over 30 questions that have already come in. So Mu'mineen, we will do our best to try to get to as many questions as possible in the 50 some odd minutes that we have with Maulana Sahib. And if we're unable to get to your questions, inshallah, this you can reach out to Maulana directly, or perhaps we can organize another session like this where we can tackle some of the questions that we may not be able to get to this evening. Also, you will notice that for when you submit a question on Menti, you're able to vote for the questions and allow us to I guess, prioritize the questions that are being asked of Maulana Sahib. So if you do have a question that is similar to one that is already being asked and you vote for it, it will climb up through the ranks, and inshallah we will tackle the questions in the order of priority so that we can get to the questions that most people are thinking about. So with that being said, the first question that Maulana Sahib for you is, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes all human beings perfect, why are some children born with inborn deficiencies? If you say it's because of the actions of the parents, then why is it that the child should be dealing with this problem?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, it's a very complex issue, but I'll try to make it as brief as possible. Number one, when we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ahsanul Khaliqeen, He is the best of creators. That doesn't necessarily mean that, we are applying it to every individual case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created the best of systems. But the system runs then based on that cause and effect. And there are many, many factors which come in, many natural that we know, some of them we wouldn't know, where sometimes, a child would be born with physical handicap. But that's not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was not able to do his work in the best manner. He created a system, and the system works according to that. So, whether people follow the laws of nature or they follow the laws of the faith, all these things have an impact on that. But that doesn't mean that if a child is born handicapped, this is because of the sins of the parents. There is nothing like that. And so to attribute the handicap of a person to the sins of the parents is not a valid statement from the Islamic point of view. Nobody has a right to judge that. This is itself an element of test, imtihan and ibtila for the individual as well as for the parents. And so, like the ayat in Surah Baqarah, which says that وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, that we are surely going to put to you through different tests. One is when it says, in case of yourself, which could be your life, or it could be, an illness which you go through, and that will be a test for yourself. Not necessarily this is an adhab or punishment for the sin that a person has committed. So let us not link, handicap of a person or disability of a person or the illness of a person, that this is because of the sin that the person has created. There is this mentality out there, and sometimes people are cruel, I would say, very rude when they even speak their mind on these issues in that way, and that is not right at all.
Thank you, Maulana Sahib. Next question. What is the best way to explain to my 4-year-old daughter why there are some ladies in our family who don't wear hijab when I do, as well as my expectation is that she will as well? So how do you explain to a 4-year-old child, while there are other ladies in the household, perhaps, or in the family that are not wearing hijab, while the mother is wearing hijab and expects that the daughter, inshallah, will also wear hijab?
For a 4-year child, it is not really that easy, but maybe we can sometimes use an example where you might see that, there is something known to be the norm. This is how people should do it. But then they will notice that somebody is, for example, is not following those rules and regulations. Whether it is the issue of, standing in the queue to go somewhere, somebody is trying to jump in. Examples like that can be used to say that, not everybody follows the laws. Sometimes they are caught, sometimes they are not. But for us, it is necessary to follow the laws which are there. And so when it comes to the issue of hijab, There are Muslims of all kinds. There are some who follow, some who don't follow. And we have to basically look at our own situation and make sure that we fulfill the laws and the regulations.
Thank you. Can we eat salads from a restaurant which serves non-halal food?
So it is a restaurant which doesn't serve halal. And so you're talking about eating non-meat products.
Correct.
Yes,
So
yes,
the question
yes,
specifically
okay.
said salads, but yes, non-meat products from a restaurant that doesn't generally serve halal food.
You see, when we talk about food items, remember there are two different standards. When it comes to meat products, the standard ruling is that you consider that to be haram until it is proven to you that this is halal. This is from Zabiha, for example. But when it comes to non-meat products, you assume it is halal. And so then the issue of najasat comes in, whether it is pak or najis or not. And in case of non-meat food items, if the restaurant is run and managed by Ahl Kitab, there wouldn't be a problem at all. Even if they are non-Ahl Kitab, kuffar, then there is a ruling of Ayatul Sistani which has changed in the last 2 years or so, where he says that those non-Muslims who are not from Ahl Kitab, their najasat is now being degraded from a fatwa to the issue of ihtiyat wajib. And so if you can find a marja, so when your marja, for example, Ayatul Sistani says this is ihtiyat wajib, in those kinds of situations, he's allowing you to refer to the second opinion. And among the existing senior maraja, I would say it is Ayatollah Makarim who holds that opinion. And so, yes, in case of non-meat food item, you would be able to consume it.
Thank you. Maulana, what is Islam's perspective on the Black Lives Matter movement, and why aren't there stories taught or spoken about in majalis and madrasa about famous African personalities in our religion?
Well, as far as the issue of talking about, see, there are two things here. One is the issue of racism. I think this issue is being addressed even before this incident of this black individual who was basically killed by this officer when he put his knee on the throat of the person or on the neck of the person. These issues have been talked about. I don't believe that this has been totally ignored. And so the issue of talking about racism, whether it's against a visible minority like the Afro-American people or others, it is an issue that this is discussed in different places. Of course, the frequency depends on the situation and the time. Do we talk about the personal individuals from the Afro-American community? Well, I think Malcolm X is the most famous one, and he has been mentioned. Even me, when I talk about the issue of racism or talking about Hajj and the impact on that on Malcolm X, especially quoting his letter to his wife. These are the issues that we talk about. But whether we necessarily go on the same path as, Black Lives Matter as a movement, that's a different issue. We don't necessarily have to go with an organization or a movement to fight against racism, because it is a broader issue. Whether you follow that Black Lives Matter movement or not, racism is a problem in the West as well as in the East, in Muslim and non-Muslim societies, and it should be discussed. At least on my part, there are many situations where I have addressed this issue. And if you want to see more about it, maybe I may refer you to a book by my late father. It is called Slavery from the Islamic Perspective. And there you will see that, he talks about many historical figures, especially from the African background.
Maulana Sahib, since you've alluded to your marhum father's book on slavery, one of the questions that was asked is with regards to slavery and why Islam did not forbid slavery immediately. Perhaps maybe if you can touch on that as well, since you've already referenced your father's book.
Well, I will leave the details there. He has discussed this question in detail. But I'll tell you that, when Islam came to the scene, slavery was not in a way invented by Islam. It existed centuries before it. And when Islam looked at some of these social issues, it was not possible to just, end it just, by the stroke of a pen and say it's haram from tomorrow. Because it has many other implications, and Islam wanted to bring it in such a way that, the slaves are also then integrated into the society. And this is where and I'll give you one example to make it very brief. Abraham Lincoln is the one who signed the proclamation making the slaves free. And it took them more than a century for the Afro-American community in the United States of America to get their civil rights to be on this same footing, whether it is to do with the school or other civil rights, until you have the individual like Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. King, who came in. He started this movement. So it took them more than a century to get their basic civil rights in the society, where slavery had been eliminated a century ago, more than that. And this is where Islam came with a three-pronged, basically, program to gradually end this process of slavery among the Muslims. And the details I will leave you to go and read in the book of my late father. Unfortunately, Banu Umayyah comes to scene, and they basically, instead of moving in that direction where gradually slavery would be eliminated, they promoted even more. And so Islam looked at it as a social ill, and it was looking at a process of gradually integrating the slaves into the society, rather than just issue a declaration and then nothing happens after that.
Thank you. Next question. Maulana, how do you know if your dream is a message from God? Maybe, I guess it's a question perhaps more generally on dream interpretation.
Yeah. The question is a good one, and I think, many people ask that question, and I think that will be a good response to many. Let me tell you one thing, that in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about revelation to the Anbiya, one of the methods used is the dream. But remember, this is for the Anbiya. For example, Ibrahim alayhi salam, the command which came to him to go through this test of slaughtering, sacrificing his own son, was not given to him through a malak, an angel. It was not a book which was sent down or cast in stone or something like that. This was through the dream, because in the Quran, Ibrahim alayhi salam is quoted there, Inni ara fil manam, I see in the dream that this is what I'm doing. And so the dream becomes a vehicle of communication between Allah and the Anbiya, but not for us, especially not after we have had our good biryani. No, definitely not. And so, this issue that this is a message from Allah to me, I don't think we should make such a claim about ourselves in any way. Yes, dreams sometimes can indicate what is happening or what is going to happen soon, for example, things like that. But let us not put it in the as a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you. Maulana, in the question you answered about eating salads, for example, from a restaurant that serves non-halal food, you had referenced the term ihtiyat wajib. Can you explain what ihtiyat wajib means, please?
You see, a mujtahid, when he's giving his verdict on issues, sometimes he gives a very definitive fatwa. This is wajib, this is haram. But sometimes, the evidence which is there, based in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Masumin in front of him, it is not that conclusive. So he takes the path of precaution. And he would say, I think I will lean towards the precaution and say, don't do it. But he cannot say this is haram because his evidence is not 100% conclusive. And this is where a mujtahid then says, ihtiyat wajib, don't do this. Means as a obligatory, precaution, I ask you not to do this. So you have, in that case, he's actually giving you the option that if there is another mujtahid of the same level who has a clear opinion and fatwa, not ihtiyat. So you don't go from ihtiyat to ihtiyat. You go from ihtiyat to somebody else of the same caliber who has a clear fatwa on this issue, and then that's what is known as ruju. Then you can refer to the second mujtahid if you want to. Otherwise, you can still, follow the precautionary ruling of your marja.
Thank you, Maulana. After marriage, does the wife have to listen to her father or her husband? And there was another question about a little further down the list about whether when a husband or when a couple gets married, does a man have a greater obligation towards his mother or his wife? So maybe if you can tackle both questions together.
Yeah. Well, as far as the issue of obligation, listening is concerned, after marriage, the lady comes from the vilayat of the father to the vilayat of the husband. In a sense, now, who is the head in that family? For a married woman, it would be the husband now and not the father. However, when we talk about listening, that itself has to be clarified. It doesn't mean, your husband is saying, well, you can't sleep now because I'm still working, so stay away for 1 hour. No, there's those kinds of hukum and orders are not binding. The main thing would be that, when it comes to the issue of, going out or traveling somewhere else, that is where the authority of the husband comes in, not in the mundane issues of day-to-day life. And so, a Muslim father who has a married daughter would not say that, oh, I'm telling you, come here, and visit me. Even if your husband is saying, no, that wouldn't be the right thing to do. Of course, the husband also has to be understanding. And, especially when it comes to the issue whether the wife can leave the home without the permission of the husband. Remember, it doesn't mean that for each and every case, the wife has to ask the question. No, is taken for granted. It's more about the issue, what is the place or the time when the husband doesn't like this to take place. It's not that for any instant that the wife wants to go out, she needs to call up and say, can I go out? No. So we understand even the extent of the authority of the husband there. Coming to the issue of obligation that a person has, whether towards his wife or towards the mother, again, these are challenging issues. When it comes to maintenance, providing for the family, if you look at the list of those who are wajibun nafaqa, whose maintenance is wajib on you, the first in the list would be the wife, then the children, and then the parents. So to provide for the wife would be the first priority. But of course, it doesn't mean that, you ignore the mother. No, even she's there, part of the list of those who are wajibun nafaqa that you have to provide for them. So it's an issue of balancing it in the best possible manner.
Thank you. Is it possible to take on a mortgage and obviously pay interest on an investment rental property or an active business property? And does the same apply to farmland? Can you take a mortgage and pay interest on purchasing farmland if the intent is to grow food for human consumption off of that farmland?
See, if you put this question to any Shia mujtahid and say, I want to go and get a loan with riba and interest, the simple answer would be no, it's haram. But then some of the mujtahideen, including the late Ayatollah Khoui and the Grand Ayatollah Sistani, they say that you can take a loan from a non-Muslim individual or a non-Muslim financial institution, but not with the intention of riba and paying the interest. You should do it with the niyat of what is known as istinqaz. Istinqaz in a simple way would be that you are taking the opportunity of using the wealth that a non-Muslim financial institution is allowing you to use. So you are basically releasing it from them with according to their own laws and procedure. So it's not fraud or deceit or theft. It is according to their laws, but it should be with that niyat, not with the niyat of a loan. What it means is that your intention should not be that you're going to pay the interest. However, when you sign that agreement, it will be part of it. And once you get the loan, when the payment time comes, the bank is not going to leave you alone. They're going to get the interest from you. And so with that first niyat there in place of known as istinqaz, it is permissible to get a loan from a non-Muslim financial institution, whether it is for a home or for business or for investment property or for farmland or whatever. So the niyat is very, very crucial there.
Thank you, Maulana. How do you ensure, or how can you ensure that your du'as are fulfilled?
This is not a simple task. If you see that you're asking the du'as and they are not being fulfilled, you see the problem is we wouldn't be able to know why not. Sometimes it would be that maybe in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, probably that is not a good thing for you. And therefore Allah is kind of delaying it and not responding to the dua. But sometimes it could be that the response is not coming because maybe we have created barriers between ourselves and our du'as. In Dua Kumail, the statement where we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for about 6 categories of sins. One of the ones is, it says where, oh Allah, forgive me the sins which creates a barrier from my dua to reach to you. And in that, one thing would be to see if there is a haqq and a right of somebody, maybe even somebody who is close to you, where you have not fulfilled, you have violated. And so if there is a delay in the acceptance of the du'as, one of the first things to do on our side to make sure we don't have any barriers created by ourselves would be to fulfill the haqq and the right of the other person. The other would be, trying to do the namaz on prime time. That itself also has a great impact in acceptance of the du'as. And of course, we should never forget the issue of tawassul and asking through the wasila of Muhammad and ala Muhammad salawatullah alayhi ajma'in.
Thank you. Mulana, this is a historical question. Why is it that we don't hear about the sisters of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam?
Well, I'll ask another question there. Why don't we hear about the brothers of Amir al-Mu'mineen?
Indeed.
So, see, the issue is that we respect Ahlul Bayt. We respect that family. But it doesn't mean that everyone in that individual family or, the sibling on the same family would be on the same level of importance. So when you talk about Amir al-Mu'mineen is Amir al-Mu'mineen. He is even Amir of his brother Aqil. He was even higher than on the status of Jaffar, for example. And so when we talk about this issue, we have to realize that, similarly when you talk about the sister of Amir al-Mu'mineen, or even when it comes to the issue of the children of Amir al-Mu'mineen, mashallah, Allah had blessed him about 25, 26 children. We don't even know the names of all of them. Even when it comes to the daughters, for example, we only know the names of the 2 daughters from Fatima al-Zahra salawatullah alayha, not from the other wives. And even when it comes to, for example, Zainab and Kulthum, we talk more about Zainab because after all, she was the older one and her impact was greater than anyone else in the ladies of the Banu Hashim in Karbala. Actually, Imam Hussain alayhi salam had assigned her the task of protecting Imam Zainul Abidin and continuing this mission. So everybody has their own, importance. It's not that we don't love them, we don't respect them. And because of that, you will see even the information from the historical sources wouldn't be on the same level. What we know about Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's not same as what we know about, his brother Aqil, for example. When we look at the other children of Amir al-Mu'mineen, even the children of al-Banin from Ali, there are 4 brothers, but we know more about Ali, Abbas than the other 3. So there are also challenges as far as history is concerned, that we don't have that much information about others that much.
Thank you, Maulana. This question, I think obviously has been asked before, but I'll ask it nonetheless. Is vaping haram? I know prior to COVID, there was a lot of discussion about the negative impact of vaping. A few days ago, there's also been news about how those who smoke and vape are more vulnerable to COVID-19. So can you maybe address this question? Is vaping haram?
You see, the issue of vaping or shisha or smoking in general, they're all in the same category. And there are some mujtahideen who were convinced about the harm of this on the person. Harm in a sense that it's really going to have an impact in shortening the lifespan of the individual who is using it. And so they had different ways of dealing with it. The late Imam Khomeini, for example, would say that those who are non-smokers cannot begin smoking. So he was letting the smokers continue because they're already addicted to that. But those who were non-smokers were allowed, were told not to start. People like Ayatollah, and so the majority of the opinion of the Mujtahideen has been there that if they leave the responsibility on you, if you find out from your doctor, for example, or the medical studies that you would trust, and they say that this is harmful to an extent that it can even have serious implication on your life, then it is haram for you to use it. So they leave the responsibility on you. People, those who are convinced, Ayatollah Nasser Makarim Shirazi also was with the majority. He used to say, if you are convinced, it's haram for you. If you're not convinced, it's okay. But then the Medical Association of Iran, a team of scientists went to him and they made a presentation in his to him to show the harm of smoking, for example. After listening to that, he actually changed his opinion and he said, for my muqallideen, it is haram to smoke. And so that same ruling, I would say, Ayatollah Sistani still leaves it on the individuals to make that decision. So the ruling would be the same whether you're talking about smoking, shisha, or vaping.
Thank you. Maulana, is there such a thing as a soulmate? Considering the Quran says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in pairs. So what are your thoughts on whether there exists a soulmate of ours in this world?
I am not sure about it. I hear about it that, when every child is born, there's a jinn born with him. So, but I cannot recall anything of that kind. So I would have hesitation in saying yes, but I'll have to look into it.
I think the perhaps the questioner was asking, when we talk about a man and woman, that a woman is the soulmate of the man, or vice versa.
Oh, okay. So maybe I misunderstood the question.
Pairs in that.
Okay. In that way, I would say no. Otherwise, there would be nobody who goes from this dunya who is single. So everybody has to somehow, get married before they die, and that is not the case. And so this issue of soulmate, no. Yes, we hear about the statement of, marriages are made in heaven and things like that. I don't know. These are all poetry. It's not really haqiqat or reality, no.
Thank you. Maulana, when we get to Mars, how will we pray salat? So maybe whether it's Mars or the moon or whatever, perhaps if you can talk about what do our mujtahideen say when it comes to salat.
Yeah, when you travel to the outer space, whether you're going to a planet or just, going around in a spacecraft, see, in this dunya, your qibla is Masjid al-Haram, Mecca. But when you leave the earth atmosphere, go into the space, then your qibla is the earth. So earth will become your qibla, not necessarily the Kaaba, no.
Thank you. Maulana, are we allowed to work in a store where non-halal meat is sold? This could be a grocery store like No Frills or Walmart, or a fast food or coffee shop like McDonald's or Tim Hortons. So are we allowed to work at a place where non-halal meat is sold?
If it is all the examples I mentioned is more a grocery store or, coffee shop and things like that. If it was exclusively, let's say a butcher shop or meat shop itself, then that would be a problem. But if you are working in Loblaws or other, coffee shops where you are selling or dealing with other items, which would be halal, and this would be on the side in a way, or percentage wise it is less, then it wouldn't be a problem. So, in general, I would say no, it wouldn't be a problem, no.
Thank you.
But when it comes to, things like intoxicating drinks, beer and wine, yeah, that would be a total no. And so if it is just, a liquor store, of course it would be haram. And if it is the section in the grocery store which deals with that, you'll have to somehow try to get yourself assigned to all different areas, but not that.
Thank you. Mullah, do you see that there's a lack of youth trying to become religious scholars? How do we encourage more people or more youth to become scholars?
I don't think, by looking at the numbers now that we have in the seminaries, I don't think there is lack of it. I think the numbers are much greater now compared to 20 years ago. So there is an interest, no doubt about it, and we hope that some of the youths who are going to study or those who are studying, when they come back, they will be able to help the community in that way, especially those who are gone from the western part of the world, because they grew up here, they know the challenges, they don't have to go through the issue of orientation and be familiar with the climate and the environment and to know the challenges. They grew up with the challenges themselves. And as the Quran says in Surah Tawbah, that, why does not a group from every community, go to dedicate their life in studying religion, لِيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, so that they become learned in the matters of religion, and so that when they go back to their communities, they will warn them and they will basically, educate them and let them know what is halal and what is haram. So that is the purpose, as well as the the whole process has been in a way defined there in the Quran itself. And so there is the greater interest, as I said, compared to 20 years ago. So hopefully, we will see more younger people coming onto the scene.
Inshallah. Maulana, why is the punishment for an apostate the death penalty?
Well, again, this is a very complex issue. I would refer you to a very extensive essay I had on this issue, which is on the website alislam.org, al-islam, on apostasy. And I talked about this issue in detail. Briefly, what I'll say is that there are two dimensions to this issue of becoming apostate. One is personal belief or disbelief, and one is making that into a political statement against the Muslim community. These are two different things. When it comes to a genuine, doubt about a religious matter or on the matters of belief, that by itself cannot become the basis of punishment. If there is an individual who has an intellectual doubt about one of the fundamentals of Islam, it is the duty of the scholars to sit down, discuss with this person, try to convince him or her about this issue. And so I don't think that we can stop people from thinking. The issue of punishment only comes when that person makes the apostasy as a political statement. And unfortunately we have, and I would say there are many non-Muslim religious groups also in the West who find such people and then they try to use them as a projection against Muslim societies. And so when that become a political stand, then this is where the issue of treason comes in. And that's where if it is in a Muslim society, in a Muslim system, all this system of Sharia laws would come into place. So it's not just a simple matter of somebody becoming an apostate and he has to be get rid of. No, and it's not even an issue which can be left to the individuals and vigilantes and things like that. This is a very serious issue. There is a procedure, a court system, and everything. And so it's not that simple to say anybody who becomes an apostate is going to be killed. No.
Thank you. Maulana, what is the title of the article that's available on alislam.org on this issue?
It's called Apostasy in Islam.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sanitizers have alcohol. What is the ruling of saying our prayers after applied the sanitizer on our hands?
I think the alcohol used in this sanitizers are, I don't think this is the one which is of the category of najis ones.
It's generally industrial alcohol.
Yeah. So secondly, even if it is, according to Ayatul Sistani, alcohol is haram to consume, but not najis. Let me repeat that. According to Ayatul Sistani, alcohol is haram. Khamr is haram. But it is not necessarily najis. And so hand sanitizer shouldn't be a problem in namaz. No.
Thank you. Maulana, a question on hijab. Why does a woman have to cover herself up physically with hijab, but the obligation on a man is just to lower his gaze? This seems to place an unfair expectation on women. Can you comment on the difference in hijab for men and versus women, please?
The issue of hijab we had understand in Surah An-Nur, Surah number 24. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about it, this issue of lowering the gaze is not only for men, it is for men and women both. So on that issue, they are all on the same level, if I might use that term. Then we come to the issue of the covering. And this is where Islam basically talks about this concept of modesty. It's important to keep in mind that when we talk about, a Muslim man or woman stepping outside the family environment, this is where the hijab issues come in. And a woman is required to cover herself as far as this rule of modesty is concerned. And the Quran actually talks about it. After talking about the hijab of eyes, it talks about the hijab of the clothing. And the way it has been described in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Masumeen is that other than the face and the arms, everything has to be covered. The style of the the clothing or the color or the material are not important. Every society has a different way of making these clothes, as long as it fulfills the covering of the body. And this is where we say that, you know, there is more an element of attraction as far as the body of the woman is concerned. We cannot deny that reality. The West doesn't want to accept it, you know, but this is a reality, that the element of attraction is there. And that is where, you know, this hijab has been made mandatory. But that does, now coming to the men side, if you look at even Arab society, you know, even the men, although we don't have the same obligatory rulings about covering up, you will see that even the Muslim men, when they go out, they are supposed to dress in a modest and decent manner. And especially if you look at the Middle Eastern society, they actually have the thawb, which covers their entire body, full sleeves. The only thing remaining is the head. But even there, many of them, you know, use this Arab headgear. And so when you look at the practice which is there in the Muslims cultures, you know, this issue of covering up is there for both men and women. Of course, it is more, you know, wajib when it comes to women going outside the home as compared to the men. But the sense of modesty is there for both genders.
Thank you, Maulana. Just sort of two related questions to the one you just answered. One with regards to whether men are allowed to wear shorts, if you can maybe address that question. And with regards to ladies, is it wajib for ladies to wear socks when they go out? Is socks part of a lady's hijab?
Men are allowed to wear shorts in a sense. Let me put it this way. It is not a wajib for men to cover their entire, you know, legs. And so if they wear, let's say, shorts till about mid-thighs, that would be acceptable. But remember again what I mentioned about, you know, the concept of decency that we have in Islamic norm and cultures, that even though technically a man can wear those shorts till mid-thigh and even do the namaz, but if the same person wants to go into the masjid and do that, you know, everybody will turn around to see this fellow with disapproval. And you shouldn't be surprised if the trustees of the masjid will come and say, please go away, because you're not, you know, dressed in an appropriate manner. So yes, for men, it's not mandatory to cover their legs totally. But again, remember this concept of decency when it comes to dressing when you go outside the home. What is the second one?
Whether socks should be worn.
Oh, the socks. Yeah. Yes. When it comes to the issue of socks, if the feet is exposed, so if the shoes is such a way that it, you know, it's not exposed, then it's not an issue. Socks would be irrelevant there. But if not, then yes, the feet has to be covered.
Thank you, Maulana. We are almost out of time, so I'll tackle just one more question, and then inshallah we'll wrap it up. There is one question about you know, why there's a disproportionate share of inheritance for men versus women. But what I will say to answer that question is that there is a seminar of Maulana Sahib on an Islamic will. Inshallah, we are also planning another one coming up over the next few weeks. So inshallah, we will tackle that question at that time. But you could also go back and listen to one of the previous seminars that Maulana Sahib has conducted on this issue. So Maulana, one last question. Why is organ donation after death not permissible?
Well, the answer wouldn't be yes and no. I think there is a difference of opinion among our mujtahideen on this issue. And to understand fully the different opinions also, you can go to the resource section in our website of the Jamaat, and under the section on Al Furqan newsletters, there is an article that I have on organ donation and transplantation. There you will see the different opinions, and the reason is that there is a tension between two things. When a person dies, a Muslim's body has its own sanctity, and the heirs and the community in general is responsible to handle it properly and to make sure it is buried. So on one hand, this sanctity, hurmat of the mayyit of a Muslim is on one side. Then on the other side, we have this issue of organ donation. That it has its own merit, and so there is a clash between these two hurmats. Which supersedes the other? And that's where the debate and discussion is there among the mujtahideen. People like Ayatollah Khoi actually used to allow organ donation provided the deceased had made a will very clearly. So the heirs don't have a right to make the decision. But people, even among his students, people like Ayatollah Sistani or the marhum Ayatollah Jawad Tabrizi, they used to disagree with their teacher. They used to say that when you say the deceased has a right to make a will, there is a limitation in what you can write in your will. And he says that will would not cover this issue when it comes to the sanctity of the body of that person himself or herself. And so people like say Sistani and Jawad Tabrizi marhum, they say that even if you write a will, that will is not valid. So there is a tension among the mujtahideen on this issue, and you can refer to that article for details.
Thank you, Maulana Sahib. It's already 9 o'clock and Maghrib is almost upon us. Maulana Sahib, thank you once again for your time and for addressing as many questions as we could in the 1 hour that we had. I think with your permission, Maulana Sahib, maybe we can organize another weekend afternoon, because we have probably another 80 questions that we didn't get to this evening. And,
okay, well, maybe we can schedule something.
Before Muharram, we can try to schedule one more session on a weekend afternoon. There are a variety of questions that Mu'mineen want to ask, particularly under the circumstances that we are in right now, where everything's closed. This may be a good forum to be able to reach out to yourself. So Mu'mineen, we apologize for not being able to get to all of your questions. There are some really good questions, but due to the lack of time, we're not going to be able to get them to them tonight. Inshallah, we will try to organize another session with Maulana Sahib before the month of Muharram, and inshallah, we will try to tackle these questions.
Maybe we can announce it ahead of time so people can send their questions also ahead of time.
Sure.
A day at least before, so we can also prepare accordingly.
Sure, inshallah. So Mu'mineen, with that, please do remain safe and remember us in your du'as, inshallah. And with that, inshallah, we will wrap up tonight's program. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله السلام عليك يا ابن وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونحيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة كتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مظلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التكي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والوروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن، بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى جسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة حضرة علي أكبر عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن مظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة of the martyrs of Karbala. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله ووداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الزكي الناسه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي، طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيارة حضرة عباس عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لك أن نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المهام الناصر والأخو الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعته عن ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، والحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا وفاطمة وأولادهما المعصومين بالحق حجج الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد